Academic success is probably one of the most important outcomes that UW families have for their students. It's also at the top of mind for first-year students as they get ready to start their first quarter. In fact, first-year students tell us that their main concerns include developing study skills, time management, managing academic coursework, and achieving satisfactory grades. One of the biggest misconceptions that we try to overcome is this idea that nobody cares about you when you go to a large public university like the University of Washington. However, this couldn't be further from the truth. At UW, we understand that developing an academic mindset, like study skills, time management skills, and managing academic coursework, this matters to a student's academic success. In today's episode of the Husky Huddle Up podcast, we're huddling up with Ryan Burt and Alli Botelho from Academic Support Programs. Ryan and Alli lead a great team of peer tutors and academic success coaches who help students prepare for exams, find support on homework, and connect to an entire ecosystem of resources across campus. Well, we are here with our colleagues from Academic Support Programs, Alli and Ryan. Good to have you on the podcast. We're really excited to chat with you today. Alli, why don't you get us started with a quick introduction about yourself, and we'll get to know both of you a little bit better today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Carlos. Hi, everyone. My name's Alli Botelho. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Academic Success Coaching Program Manager with Academic Support Programs at UW. And so I'm originally from Oahu, Hawaii, and then I came here to Seattle for my undergraduate experience at Seattle Pacific University, and then went to graduate school at Seattle University, and where I was able to do an internship with Academic Support Programs starting in the beginning of 2020. And then from there have been welcomed into the ASP family, into this role later in 2020, and have been here ever since.
Awesome. This is great. Ryan, how about you?
Well, hello, wonderful parents and supporters of the Littles and the Huskies. We're excited to have the chance to talk with you. My name is Ryan Burt. I use he, him pronouns. I am Director of Academic Support Programs, and we're excited to talk with y'all about what that means and how we support your Huskies or future Huskies. I am actually from Washington State. I grew up in Eastern Washington in Spokane, and I actually went to University of North Carolina for a year, then transferred to University of Washington. So I did almost all my undergrad at UW, and then I did graduate school at the University of Washington. So I've been here a long time, but I'm very thankful for that. I can speak to kind of both of my own experiences as an undergraduate, which kind of I think informs a bit about how we think about programming and supporting students, but also, I can't leave. I got a lot of purple in me. But yeah, I just want to say I also have a 3.5-year-old and 1.5-year-old. And so parents, I salute you. If you're listening, you are magic. If you're at the point where you're thinking about your kid being at UW, you are magic. And send me notes.
I think this is a great time to start everybody talking about what is Academic Support Program, and would love to invite our resident historian, Ryan, it seems like, to see if we can come all the way from the very beginning.
Yeah. So right now, Academic Support Programs is kind of our larger organization that supports essentially two really important columns of support for students. One of the largest multidisciplinary study centers and tutoring centers on campus, called CLUE, the Center for Learning and Undergraduate Enrichment, and Academic Success Coaching. And Alli and I will talk a bit about those different things. Alli is the wonderful person who oversees our coaching program. But to tell you a little bit about the history of academic support programs, I would say I have two phrases that capture what I think academic support programs is all about. One is complex models of support for a diverse student population. So we want each of your kids to feel cared for and loved and enriched and supported in our programs. So that's one of them. And a similar one that I think is kindred to that is an academic home away from home for all students. So that you feel, kind of, a sense of family with our crews. So we hire students at the University of Washington to tutor and coach. And so we kind of really rely on awesome students in our work. But the history, so kind of related to those kind of soundbite snapshots of our program, originally we were only the Multidisciplinary Learning Center, CLU, the Center for Learning and Undergraduate Enrichment. And CLU was kind of born in this larger unit that actually Carlos and Alli and I are a part of, called Undergraduate Academic Affairs. And I think, maybe about 30 years ago-ish, you can check my math, I think the University of Washington was thinking, okay, we're a large public university and we care a lot about research and faculty focus on those things, but we also care very much about undergraduates. And so how can we have kind of a centralized unit that's not necessarily affiliated with the department support undergraduates? And so our kind of tutoring center emerged in that space. So serving a lot of students in kind of a lot of their first and second years at the university. I would say maybe about 15 years ago, the former director of academic support programs started asking questions about the students that were not coming into the learning center. So what students, we're serving a lot of students here, but oftentimes the students that are coming to the learning center already have good habits, because that's an important thing to do. Studying community, that's a key thing for us, studying thinking community, thinking groups. But we're asking questions, who might we be missing? What students might need a different type of support? And we, at that point, the director built out deeper models of support courses for those students who might need a little more love in that regard, who might needs a little more nudging to come in and kind of think through what we call the invisible curriculum, what might not be apparent to all students. And so I would say those courses kind of then grew into what is now our coaching program. I think a lot of the kind of things we're cooking up and coaching come out of that kind of philosophy. So I'd say to this day, those are actually kind of the two critical pieces of our program, thinking about serving students broadly, because it is a large public university, but also serving each student individually and showing care and thoughtfulness for each of their kind of identities and ways of being in the world. So that's one thing I guess I'll emphasize for if you're listening is even though it is a large public university, we genuinely care for each of your students, and it's important for us to support them.
Well, and I think, and you talk about being able to provide, academic support to students and being able to expand those services. I mean, one of the newer approaches that you all have taken on is this academic success coaching program. And I've seen coaches pop up, peer coaches pop up across campus, whether it's peer wellness coaches, academic support coaches. Can you talk a little bit about kind of what is the difference between coaching and tutoring? Maybe explain a little bit more about that coaching program.
I guess I can start, and Ryan, if you want to add on more about tutoring or anything. But I think that is such a good question, Carlos. I think that's something we want to let students know about. When can they see a tutor? When can they see a coach? What does that look like? And so we often say that tutoring is a bit more content specific. And so our tutors at CLU, we have many different subject areas in chemistry, math, physics, statistics, economics, computer science and engineering, as well as a writing center. So if students have questions around, maybe they're working on a homework assignment or they're studying for an exam and they would like to kind of work with a problem with a tutor or have questions around that subject area, our tutors are great for that. I would say for like writing, it also can be unrelated to maybe academics specifically, but it could be an application they're working on or a cover letter or some kind of piece where they can come to a tutor to get support in. And then I would say coaching is a bit more holistic in the approach versus specific content area. And so while our tutors can support in different coursework, our coaches can kind of help with different strategies for what academic success might look like for them, for that specific student. And so I think both our tutoring and coaching experiences are one-on-one and kind of catered to the student. But for coaching, coaches often talk about different strategies such as time management, motivation, study strategies, connecting to campus resources, and it really is tailored to what is most helpful for the student and what they're looking for. And so our coaches often approach the session really differently based on what the student might be experiencing at UW. We often say if a student isn't sure like who to go to, a coach is a really good first person to just like talk to. They're another student at UW. We also train them on how to connect with other campus resources. And so if the student isn't sure and the coach isn't sure in the moment, we can still get them that resources or connect them with folks or talk with another student from their point of view of that piece. I think there's a lot of wonderful pieces, but Ryan, do you want to add anything about what might be helpful for folks to know between like tutoring and coaching?
No, I think Alli, no, thank you. I think you really captured it well. I think one thing I might share with folks is just this metaphor that I talk about a lot with our kind of students, and why I think it's really powerful. We're both coaching and tutoring, but and why peer-to-peer support is so critical to us. I guess from my perspective, one of the beautiful, powerful aspects of our program is that our coaches and our tutors serve as a bridge between what faculty and instructors hope that the students are learning in their class and are hopeful that they're learning, and what students are actually learning. And I think that's because our coaches and tutors are in classes themselves, or in different disciplines departments themselves, so they're closer to the learning experience of your Huskies, your kids, and so there's an active translation that they can do based on their own knowledge. It's nothing I could do because I'm not in those classes. It's what they can do. So I think Alli really captured that well, and I'd say for both models, that peer support is really kind of an anchor for us. Not all learning centers on campus are peer-to-peer, but it's central to our philosophy. So I just sprinkle that on there.
There's a video that we share with first-year students where it frames your academic support team as including your professors and your instructors, as well as the tutors and teaching assistants and all the other ways that students can get academic support. So I think the way that both of you have described it really kind of sets it up as, this is an entire, kind of menu of resources that students should always use as a way to kind of just approach their academics.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's really thoughtfully said, Carlos. It's like an ecosystem. It's like a learning ecosystem. And I think one critical thing for your Husky, for your kiddos, I think is having kind of a proactive student identity. So they are kind of proactively navigating that ecosystem and reaching out to their professors and connecting with their teaching assistants and coming in to meet with a coach or a tutor. So I think that's an awesome point.
I think this is really helpful and illuminating for families, regardless of whether or not they've attended college, at least even in the United States. It's like, what I think tutoring, that discussion about subject matter related kind of questions, testing, writing, is still here, but it's not necessarily just the one way to kind of approach how to provide support for the Huskies. I love this visual of the team of academic support, including faculty, including professors and instructors. I think that sometimes our families are like, ooh, they're not as approachable. Actually, they are part of this really holistic way of saying the focus is learning and the focus is making sure that our students are successful. And, you could be a visual learner, like, maybe you like listening to like podcasts and that's how you learn. Maybe you like to read through, you need to draw things out. And I love the fact that it's peers, it's peer centric as well. And I just wanted to take a little bit of time for families to really ingest that. Like, it is not about the test. It is not just solely about the grade. It's really figuring out how best you can manage your time, how best to study, what works well with you. What is the way for you to get this information and understand it. And I really like that aspect of it. I also wanted to ask if most of the coaches are very STEM focused. Is that a misconception? Because I think that might be something that our families are like, well, this has just got to be like math or calculus or maybe some writing. Could you talk about what makes up your coaching team and your tutoring team?
Yeah, that's a super great question, Jannah. I think I'll add on about just like our coaches and tutors, they love what they do and they love to support students. And I think a lot of the reasoning is because kind of what you mentioned, like they experience those challenges themselves. They love talking to other students and helping students find like what is best for them. Students can meet with our coaches or tutors as many times as they would like. They can meet weekly. They can a lot of times students build those relationships with coaches and tutors in helping them support them throughout that quarter. And I think like what you mentioned about, is it just STEM focused? That's such a great question. We try our best to have coaches in many different disciplines all throughout, not just STEM. We don't have every single major out there, but we don't, and it kind of differs year to year depending on our coaching cohort. But we definitely do have coaches who are at the moment we have coaches who are education majors, English majors, business, communication, informatics, students in law school. We have most of our coaches and tutors are undergraduates, but we also have graduates students as well who have sometimes done their undergraduate career at UW, and so we have many different majors. I think one thing I'll kind of emphasize is that a lot of our coaches, and maybe tutors as well, but I know a lot about our coaches' backgrounds, but a lot of our coaches have explored a lot of different majors. A lot of them haven't just stuck with one path. They've reimagined their path a lot. And that's a lot of times why they want to be coaches, because they know that college isn't always a linear path. It wasn't what they expected. It was hard. Many of them are first generation college students as well. But they explored a bunch of things, got to where they are, and still are figuring it out as well. But I think that's something I'll add. Ryan, I don't know if you want to talk anything else about that piece.
I think that's really thoughtfully put.
I think that was a really great aha moment of navigation, and then what a great way to recruit students to come work for you. Like, have you tried all the paths? Yes, you have. Come work with us. And that's a really great way, it sounds like, for folks to meet or learn more about kind of a path less traveled, which is really great.
Truth. I feel lucky that, I work in the same building that Clue tutoring happens with. And so sometimes when I'm leaving the office late, I get to see the setup and kind of the way that the, it's in this large, if you all can imagine, this large inner atrium of a building, beautiful brick walls, big tables to do work on. And it really is transformed for Clue tutoring, and it's huge, right? It's huge. Can you give us an idea of numbers, right? How many tutors are you working with? How many students take advantage of your programs? Because I think that might also be another misconception of, do you have the capacity to support so many students?
Yeah, it's a great question, and thanks for kind of painting the picture too, Carlos. So yeah, maybe I'll start with Clue, Alli, and I'll pass the baton to coaching. So one thing that's helpful to know is Clue is an evening study center, and we're open from 7 to 11, Sunday through Thursday. So we say if there's school tomorrow, there's Clue tonight. We have our building right outside this window here, if you can see it. As Carlos saying, is kind of modular. So in the daytime, students, there's different classrooms and services like our office where students can get support. But in the evening, we take it over, and we have it becomes our space for studying. So we have math, chemistry, physics, biology, stats, pretty much a lot. The majority of a lot of the courses your Huskies will take. A writing center, as Alli had discussed earlier. But we're also online. So I think one thing is no matter where your student is, they can see both a tutor or a coach. They can come in person or be on campus, or they can do it virtually. That's one thing actually that we developed and carried with us as a result of the pandemic. We can actually, I think, serve more students in that regard. We serve at the Learning Center. We serve thousands of students. We offer both one-on-one tutoring. So a lot of our courses are your students probably will take some larger gateway courses in subject area, like math or chemistry. There are common courses that a lot of students have to take. So we both have individual tutoring for those classes. So one-on-one, your student can drop in and get support for any class they're in. But we also offer exam reviews. So for some of the larger kind of, first year and some second year courses in math, chemistry, or physics, or for around midterm times, our tutors facilitate conversations around problems that are likely to turn up to think with your Huskies about how to best approach their midterms and finals. So so we literally serve thousands of students every year. But I think, as Alli pointed out earlier, it's a lot of our students come into our spaces weekly. It's not like a one-off thing. They actually kind of set up shop and study in community and think together. And I'll note that because that actually is a really critical aspect of the work that we do. It seems simple, but I think it's important to share and mark that research demonstrates that students that study in community and study in groups and study collectively thrive and do better at the university than students that study by themselves and focus on just doing that by themselves. And I just want to mention that because I think you should encourage your kids to connect with those resources. They have nothing, they're amazing. They're here for a reason. They have nothing to prove, just to, kind of truck it out and do it by yourself. We really think it's important to connect and study in groups. So I just mark that because you'll see that if you kind of see our Learning Center at night, you'll just see these communities studying. But I'll pass the baton to Alli around the coaching piece.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great question. And I think, I can't remember if you mentioned this, Ryan, but I think, Jannah, you're asking like how many tutors and coaches we have. We have about 50 tutors in different teams with, so they each tutor only tutors in that specific subject area. So they have teams, like a writing team, a chem team, and they work together as a team to think what is best and how to best support students. And then we also have, currently we have 10 coaches, which is our largest coaching cohort yet. We might expand a little bit more next year to have about 12, I believe, coaches. And so we're excited to do that as well. And I think, so I think that kind of with that, like our coaches, I know Ryan kind of, I don't know if this goes off the question a little bit, but I know Ryan kind of talked about like the space of CLU as well. Coaching, we have office spaces. CLU's right there outside in Mary Gates Hall Commons, and then we also have office spaces in Mary Gates Hall where students can meet with a coach one-on-one in a specific office that they have, and kind of just talk about anything that they want to talk about. We know that we know that there's so much more within a folks' college experience, and there's many different factors that impact it, and so our coaches can kind of help break those down as well. But yeah, I think that might have gone off the question, but is there any other pieces about that would be helpful?
I think that's really great. What I got from that is, build your pack and keep on building. Like, we are Huskies. We are a pack animal. we are about huddling up with Huskies. You can't huddle up with no one. You have to huddle up with your pack. So I like it. Sorry, we had to shameless plug of the podcast. I did what I wanted to.
It works. Yeah, it works.
I also love I love centering it in Mary Gates Hall. This is a really like well-traveled, well-known to all Huskies about what this place is, and we hope that you get a chance when you come and visit to see the energy, the buzz, the concentration, the collaboration that you can see from within that hall. Um, I also wanted to just expand it a little bit. We've talked a lot about first year students really coming to be the majority of students that come and see you. I was wondering if there, when or if you see second year sophomores, juniors, or seniors, do they take advantage of this really great support system? And could you talk about that and what that looks like as you progress?
Yeah, that's a great question. I can kind of start talking about coaching, and if you want to add anything about tutoring, Ryan, feel free to. But I think that's such a good question, because I think that's something we hope students know, that whatever year they're in, they can come and get support from us or meet with our coaches or our tutors. I know we mentioned tutoring being a bit more content specific. Within coaching, I think that that's something I think our coaches have talked about with each other, about quarter to quarter things change, and the study strategies that worked for them in their first year didn't work their junior year, or didn't work when they took a different course. Things are always ever changing now, but I think that's something that our coaches think a lot about, is knowing that your time, as well as your time management, or what is happening in that quarter for you, might look really different, so you might need to adjust, or you might learn that a different learning style works best for you. So I think no matter what year a student is in, they can come meet with our coaches to talk about that specific quarter, or what they might be experiencing that might have been different from their first year, taking upper division courses, or maybe being involved in more internships, or extracurriculars, that time management looks really different, or what they might need looks really different. I think we often tend to see more students in the spring quarter talking about goal setting, or talking about what to think about in the summer. Sometimes our coaches will help our students think about what goals do they have for the summer. Are there internships or things that they want to accomplish, or what does even next academic year look like? So I think things might look really different quarter to quarter and year to year, but I think that's something we hope students know, that they can come to us wherever they are. I don't know, Ryan, if you want to add anything.
Yeah, I think to kind of complement what Alli's saying, I think sometimes I myself imagine major transition points that students are experiencing. So coming in and kind of learning to acclimate to the university in their first year, transitioning into a major and learning how to think within their major or their discipline, and that's a slightly different conversation. And then transitioning out of the university. So is it going to be a job or graduate school, and what does that look like? And I think at all of those points, we are here to support, and there's more than that, but those are kind of obviously three big ones I think about. And I think our coaches and our tutors are ready to support them in any of those stages. So for instance, we hire, we're actually hiring our teams right now. It's, in spring, so we hire for next year. And so hiring on our math team, we look to see if the tutors have taken upper division math classes. So if we have juniors or seniors coming in, there's at least one or two tutors that can speak to those areas. So in that regard, in our writing center, as Alli's noting, it's kind of cyclical. So students might take major application essays in winter of whatever year. So when they're applying, for sure, graduate school applications, job letters, cover letters. So for sure, I think our tutors and coaches are kind of steeped in the ability to support students at any stage at their time at the University of Washington. So yeah, appreciate y'all raising that question.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I would imagine a really good tip for a student, especially a first year student who is kind of just getting started at the university, is to just kind of build these resources into their calendar, right? Show up at Clue even if they aren't struggling, because I feel that that's a thing that honestly, I've as a student, when I was a student, that was really my perception of tutoring, was like, okay, if I'm struggling, I will take advantage of tutoring. But what I'm hearing is that, this should be part of a student's routine anyway.
Exactly. Thank you for marking that, Carlos. I think that's spot on. That is spot on. Like, successful students, are taking advantage of these resources essentially from the get-go, and it's part of their kind of student world and their student way of being. So it's not just like, we're here for them for sure after that midterm. It's like, whoa. But kind of it just acculturate yourself to being part of these learning communities. So thanks for marking that.
That's important. Well, what are some other questions that you get, or other common misconceptions, approaches to your work that would be helpful for parents and families to understand?
Well, I think, one thing we wanted to make sure before we, while we were chatting with y'all as parents, was to talk about some ideas to support you in supporting your husky and your I say little. My kids are 1.5 and 3, so I call them little. So that's not appropriate terminology. They're not littles. Huskies. But I think a couple of things we would love for you all to think about, and perhaps it's a misconception on how, what language, and maybe not, I'm sure some of you have this, but what language should you use to support your kids as they're navigating transitions and challenges. And inevitably, there will be some difficult aspect of their journey here. Maybe it's, the first midterm that didn't go as they expected, or, a paper that they could have done better on, whatever that might be. So we wanted to mark for y'all the concept of the growth mindset that we talk a lot about with students, and it's kind of research based on a psychologist named Carol Dweck, and I think we'll link some resources for you all on the webpage that this podcast is posted at. And some of you may be familiar, but essentially it's moving away from a fixed mindset, which I kind of shorthand as you have it or you don't. Like, I can, I'm a good singer or not, or I'm good at math or not. And Dweck encourages to have a growth mindset, which is to say we all have the potential to succeed in these different areas if we embrace, a process of learning. And so one thing, for instance, if your student, your husky is, calls you up after experiencing a challenge on a midterm, language that we might encourage you to use, rather than saying, well, the outcome, what grade did you get, might be, how did you prepare for the midterm? Talk with me about how you prepared for the midterm. What are you thinking about doing differently? Have you reflected on that midterm? So focusing on the process for them rather than the outcome. So I think that's definitely one thing we wanted to mark for you, and we'll share some accessible, maybe like some resources for you to kind of check that out. That was one thing. Another one thing it's a different note, but I think we have to navigate a lot. And I think one of the beautiful things that Alli noted about the coaches is that they themselves have pivoted, and they have themselves creatively, found new paths at the University of Washington. And I think Jannah's question about kind of like a STEM focus, I think it's true even more than when I, many years ago, was an undergrad at UW. I think there's obviously, computer science and STEM like courses here, but this is a amazingly diverse, not just as far as like our amazing students, but things you can study here. And I think one thing that is helpful for parents to think about is, you might have a certain preconceived notion of what you want your husky to study, or what profession you might want them to be involved in. But trying to create space, and I know that it's a complicated question, but trying to create space for them to kind of use their own curiosity and things that they are interested in as guides as they're thinking through their journey at the University of Washington is really, really important. Because I know students, Alli and I were just talking with some students last night, and they were mentioned this. I think some of the pressures that they feel to study specific things or to become certain things, that can be powerful, but it can also be a hindrance, in that, if they're not, if it's not more of their own journey, their motivation might drop and they might have challenges around that. And so I think creating space for them to pursue multiple paths, I just wanted to mark that thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's important because both of those things are related to a student's even wellness and ability to be able to bounce back after experiencing failure or setback. And so I really appreciate, Ryan, you kind of highlighting that point of the way that a parent or a family member responds to that failure is also important.
I've appreciated this conversation and just kind of give all of you a little bit of a moment, our listeners, to kind of take that in a little bit about giving time, allowing your student to talk to you or at least begin that conversation. Sometimes, Alli, Ryan, Carlos, it's really hard to hear like normal conversation with family, how'd that midterm go? It feels like the record like scratch, right? And I wanted to kind of encourage families to allow your student to have that discussion about the wins, the weird stuff, or even the things that are like, oh, I don't know if I did that. I don't know if that went well. And having these really great ways and language to ask about the process, ask about how did you prepare, what else did you need, did you get, how did you feel, is something that might be easier to do. I know that that's such a shift from what high school was like or previous, like, or you might not even have had these types of conversations, but our students reach out to our families when all things happen at this point in time. So I really appreciate that we have this academic support program where we have fellow students that have gone through the same thing, and coaches and tutors that are also really thoughtful and mindful about how to have those conversations, right? Because it does not feel good. I mean, I know when I did not do well in my in college, I didn't really want to share that. Um, I didn't want to show that level of vulnerability. And I think if we get used to just sharing, like, I really want to figure out why that didn't work for me, feels better than I'm going to hide this F because I feel a lot of. So it happens. And I think it's a good way for us to say to families, everybody's gone through it. And this is a really great welcoming space for that.
Totally. And just to add something to that, Jannah, I really think, honestly, I remember listening to, we have the fail forward panels where, faculty or, really like, amazing people at UW talk about some of their failures. And I vividly remember one of the faculty members saying that her biggest failure was not exploring more variety in her undergraduate experience, not exploring more courses. And that was because it was kind of like GPA protection. She was afraid to take a course that, even though it sounded fascinating, it might impact her grade negatively. And I think I think it's connected to what you're saying, like allowing that space for kind of like exploration, which will include challenge and struggle, but also once they do that, will open up potential worlds to them that none of us can imagine right now. So I just wanted to.
Yeah. We are definitely going to link to that. I love that series. It feels like what I loved about it is it's uniquely UW to embrace those things. I don't see that often in other peer institutions where we have faculty members. I even remember our vice president of student life being up there and talking about just to the entire student audience to hear about what that's like. I think that's a wonderful thing to kind of to have to share with the families as well.
Well, we're just cutting at about time. I don't know if there's any last minute. I mean, literally, we can go on and on. I have so
Folks, I
many
don't know if you
questions.
know, we're big fans of these two. We're big fans.
It's true. Any last words for our listeners?
I think just feel free to let us know if you all have any questions. Like, feel free to reach out, and we can link those resources in our website. But no, just thank you for all that you do for your Huskies.
Awesome. Well, no, thank you for all that you do for everyone. And then just another quick plug: both Ryan and Alli will be presenting weekly this summer during family orientation. So if you wanted to get some questions in or get some more details, tune into our family orientation sessions this summer. Awesome. Well, thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The Husky Huddle Up podcast is a collaboration between the University of Washington first-year programs and parent and family programs to provide parents and families equitable access to information in support of their student success. The Husky Huddle Up is produced by me, Chloe Giselle, a senior in the UW Cinema and Media Studies program.